So you're writing a nonfiction book and you are wondering, how do I write my outline so I can actually get this book written and out into the world? So you need a roadmap. You need a roadmap that tells you what to write so you can get your ideas onto the page and into your finished book. And there are so many approaches to outlining, and I want to share a very simple one that's going to get you started. It's just 3 steps: brainstorming, editing, and filling out the details. And I know it sounds simple, but that's because it is. So, the first step of outlining your book is to get all of your ideas onto paper, every single one, and it's going to help you just get all the ideas out of your head, because sometimes they're swirling up there and they're kind of weighing you down. So there's a really important process of just getting it all out onto the page, out of your head, where you can see it more clearly in black and white. And once you have all your ideas on the page, what you're doing next is the editing phase. There's lots of tools to use for this. I personally like good old fashioned pen and paper, but some people use mind mapping software or post it notes. There's lots of ways you can do this. But what you're trying to find in that brainstorm are about 5 to 15 key ideas or themes, and those would become your chapters. Now, there's lots of approaches again, which is why, of course, I lead an outlining workshop, because there's so many ways to do this. But for a nonfiction book, typically you're looking for 5 to 15 chapters. And so you want to figure out what those are out of your brainstorm. Sometimes ideas in the brainstorm kind of all cluster together. You can start to see that in the editing phase. You also might realize that something maybe, it's a nice to have, but not a need to have for this particular nonfiction book that you're writing. And once you've gone through and identified those 5 to 15 key ideas that you want to talk about, then that's your beginning of your outline. So you're going to set up those 5 to 15 topics and give them a name that makes sense to you. Doesn't have to be clever, doesn't have to be the finished result, just something that makes sense to you now. And then for each of those things, you're going to fill out the details. So typically, we're talking about 3 to 5 points that you need to make to fill out those chapters. And that's the actual thing that you want to say about it. And then in addition, you might have other things like a client story, a exercise, journaling prompts. There might be some other sort of tool that you're going to offer to the reader that goes under each of those chapters. Once you have that written down, guess what? You have an outline. You now have your 5 to 15 chapters with typically 3 to 5 points that you want to make, plus any additional exercises or tools that go with the chapter that you're offering to the reader. And it really sounds simple, because it is, but it also isn't. And that's what I want to share with you. If you're feeling frustrated about this part, I just want to validate that's because sometimes you're so close to what you're saying and what you're creating, it can be hard to see it with clarity just because you're in it. It's hard to sort of pick the pieces apart. And sometimes an outside perspective is really necessary. So, what you can do if you're struggling with outlining your book because it just feels still hard to clarify those points is you can hire a book coach. You could join a writing program. You could look at other books that you love and sort of reverse engineer or break down how they structured that book and use that as inspiration for how to structure your own book. So those are the resources to help you get unstuck if you're feeling a little overwhelmed or still unsure about the outlining process. I hope that, though, gives you the inspiration to go do this process. Brainstorm your ideas, find your chapters, and get that outline on the page so that you can start writing your book. So, who am I? I'm Leah Kent. I am a book coach. I'm also a book designer, and I help entrepreneurs and creatives and healers and other visionaries just like you to write their nonfiction books, publish them so they can be seen in the world, and as a result, boost your impact, visibility, and thought leadership with the work that you are doing in the world. So, to stay connected for more support and inspiration with the writing journey, you can subscribe to this channel below. I share tips on writing and self publishing. You can also download my self publishing roadmap. It's a step by step guide for how to go from idea to finished book. It can save you a lot of time to see that all laid out in a clear roadmap. And if you have a question about writing and self publishing, I would love for you to leave a comment on this video. Let me know what your questions are so I can answer them for you in another video. So thanks so much for listening. I am so happy that you're here and can't wait to see what work you're bringing into the world.